Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Therapy Podcast. This is Ryan Rutan, joined as always by Wil Schroter, my friend, the founder and CEO of startups.com. Will, no shortage of discussion around ambition in the founder space, right? We have to be ambitious. We're going to go build something that's never existed before, based on nothing more than an idea and some blood, sweat, and lots of tears. And I think it often gets touted as a superpower, particularly on social media. You know, the ambitious founder out there killing it, doing it, burning both ends of the candle and just making it work. But there's a real cost to this, right? Like we see the other side of this. We talk to founders day in, day out. What's your view on ambition as this double-edged sword?
I think nobody talks about the cost of it, right? It'd be the equivalent of like having a marathon runner and they're running and they're winning the marathon. Like, so on paper, they're winning. But while they're doing it, their body's getting dehydrated and they're dying. And everyone's cheering them on as they collapse across the finish line. It's like, oh, what just happened here? We have this weird thing, you know, among startups, among founders, where we celebrate ambition, of course. And ambition on its surface sounds wonderful. And I'm not knocking ambition, but there is a cost to ambition. And that's the part that as founders in the startup community, et cetera, we kind of don't talk about. And it feels like everybody just like scuttles away and deals with it in a corner. I know I did. It scares me because, you know, we have so many great founders that are, you know, out to do great things, but behind the scenes, they're a mess. And I think we should talk about what that cost looks like when it comes to ambition.
What do you think the core source of this is? I mean, like I said at the top, like we sort of have to be ambitious. Ambition is a necessary ingredient because if you're not ambitious, you're not going to wake up one morning and go, you know what, this thing doesn't exist. I don't know if anybody will buy it. I don't know if anybody cares about it. I don't know if anybody will want to work on it with me. I don't know if anybody will give me money to do it. I'm going to go do it, right? Like if you don't have ambition, you're not going to start it. So I think it's important to recognize that it is a necessary ingredient. But like, I think you and I see all the time, people go from a pinch to a cup to a pound to a truckload. And this is where it starts to become a problem. In all the conversations you're having right now, like, is this across the board? Is this at a later stage thing? Is something really early stage founders need to be concerned about? Or is this like, I'm 15 years into this thing, now my ambition is caught up to me?
You know, it's actually what I've learned or what I've witnessed, and I'm curious your thoughts of what you've seen, is it gets progressively worse. It's almost like a virus. Here's how I see it metastasize, if you kind of stick with that analogy. What ends up happening is that we start off by being super ambitious. Obviously, that's why we start a startup to begin with. What happens with that ambition is, whether we realize it or not, we start raising the bar. We start setting a benchmark for what our output and what our accomplishments need to be. When do you ever hear someone say, man, coming out of college, I always wanted to be able to make 100K, but now I make 100K, don't need to do anything else? That would not be a founder, not be ambition. And yet we have this weird thing where whatever we accomplish doesn't become the goal, it becomes the benchmark. And so we keep ratcheting up. I know I've dealt with this personally. And all of a sudden, you realize that you've raised the bar, the benchmark so high that anything but that, in the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to sustain that, becomes a step backward. And I'm just going to mention this because as we're recording this, I think, you know, we're in the middle of the Paris Olympics. And, you know, I just watched Simone Biles just clean up medals in the Olympics. But the entire time, and it's just such a perfect example of this, the entire time, everyone's like, yeah, but she had that tough time in Tokyo. And it's like, yeah, dude, she won more medals than anyone. Of course, there's an insane amount of pressure.
There's a cost.
What's the cost?
Now, I think, sports is an easy analogy here because but you know, the thing that athletes don't do is continue to push after they've won. And I think part of the challenge in the startup space is we don't necessarily have these clear delineations of what we're actually truly using our ambition to drive. I think ambition's a great fuel, but there's a point where you got to let off the gas a little bit. And I think this is where founders get it wrong a lot of times. We just don't know when that moment comes where it's like, I don't actually need to be pedal to the metal. The benefit is now far outweighed by the cost of continuing this. Let me draw another completely random analogy. My 6-year-old is into anything mechanical, and the latest thing being trains. We're here as of this recording, I'm in Madrid. I've been doing a lot of train travel, a lot of subways, and he is all about it. So we downloaded a train simulator a couple of days ago, and we've been spending our evenings on this thing. Nice. It's extremely detailed. I won't go into all of it, but one of the things that he's had to realize is that, like, the amount of power it takes to get the train moving is very different than what it takes to sustain it. And
that's
if you
interesting.
stay on the gas, on a train in particular, once that thing builds momentum, you actually have the speed you need, you have to slow down or really bad things happen. In this case, it's derailment of the train. In our case, it's a derailment of the founder and often the startup right along with it. And I think that's the point that's really hard for founders to gauge is, when do I actually need to back off the ambition throttle so that I can move this thing forward at pace, but not at breakneck speed, not at something that's dangerous to me and the business. And I think that's the part we screw up all the time is we don't realize it really is a danger to us and the business. Pushing too hard can lead the entire thing to collapse.
And I think a lot, personally about how I got here, because, I am definitely afflicted with this problem. My ambition is without a doubt my greatest enemy to my health. Like, let's be specific.
I have weekly examples of this. I can vouch for you on this one, Will. Yes, you do.
Yeah, I do. And so where it started for me was when I was 19, I was starting my first company. I had no cost to my ambition. I think that's so important to kind of start with, right? So I'm at a point where I have nothing, I came from nothing. And so in my eyes, ambition equals survival, mostly. Ambition equals progress. I looked at it like, hey, I got an idea. What if I just work every waking hour for the rest of my life? And people exaggerate when they say that. I'm not exaggerating. I'm literally talking every waking hour. While some people will look at that, myself included, and again, I've got a love-hate relationship with this discussion, and some people will look at that and say, that's great, right? That's noble that you're willing to work hard. There's not a lot of people that will say work hard is bad per se, right? It's considered a good ethic, especially in the US. Yep. However, no one ever tells you until what point it's no longer okay. I'm 19. I just put myself completely into starting, an internet company back then. I get to a point where my baseline, Ryan, is every hour of every day. First 4 years of my career, I never took a day off. It didn't even occur to me you could take a day off. When I say take a day off, I'm including weekends, holidays, whatever. I didn't see my family for like 4 years. I was psychotic about it. Now, to be fair, I loved it. I was so excited the entire time. Here's why I bring that up. That became my benchmark. To this day,
that's baseline.
30 years later, dude. 30 years later, that is still my benchmark for productivity.
And think about what a dangerous baseline that is, right? When you set like every waking hour,
dude,
there's nowhere to go from there, right? That's one standard. Like, you can't go backwards. You also can't go up. So it leaves you feeling trapped. At that point, like, how do you do more? How do you feel like you're making any progress when you're already spending every single bit of it all the time? You've got nowhere to go up. You got nowhere to go down. Oh man, it's such a beautiful recipe for founder disaster. And we've seen it manifest a couple times in our lives, both of us.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man. Like, take like someone winning a Super Bowl, as an example, right? What do you do after that? Like, take Simone Biles, like we just talked about, winning all those gold medals.
You went to Disneyland. I don't know if they still do that. I don't know.
It's true. Well, like seriously, like, all you can do is win another Super Bowl. Your bar for progress is winning the Super Bowl. Like, that is your benchmark, no longer your goal. Simone Biles cleaned up every medal you could win, right? What else can that girl do?
For her now,
right? Win more medals. Like, by the way, in order for her to even like contribute to her baseline, she has to win all the gold medals. I can't think of anything that would be harder to re-achieve.
Yeah. First person to win all the medals a second time, right?
Like, come on, man.
Pretty nasty benchmark.
And those are extreme examples, but it's also an example of people who could not have possibly achieved more now have an impossible baseline. And I think that gets really interesting. And forget like their superstar success. It applies at every level. My 12-year-old daughter, who's amazing, as smart as can be, has an A+ average. You and I have talked about this, right? She's got a 100.3 GPA grade, right? Which is more than A+, which means she also gets all her extra credit, right?
Extra credits, yep.
Right. Where does she go from here exactly?
I don't know. I already have a series of care packages lined up and ready for the day, if it ever comes, where she gets just like a standard A or an A-, because she's going to need it at that point. It's going to be devastating.
Look, and it scares me. Right? It scares me.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of her. Don't get me wrong. Right? I mean, she's just
it's so hard. But but this is the double-edged sword of ambition.
It's exactly my point.
It's admirable. It's amazing. But it's dangerous, especially when we set it like that early, right? So we're talking about like, and these things often do start as like childhood patterns that carry into adolescence, that carry into young adulthood, that carry into adulthood and throughout our careers. But it goes back to the train analogy. Like, at that early stage, you have to push, you have to set some of these standards for yourself so that you know what you're capable of. You learn to accomplish, you learn the value of those things. But at some point, you do have to back off the throttle a little. And I think this is where we see founders who are like, look, this thing needs every waking moment. For that first year you were running the agency, you probably needed every single waking moment.
I did.
I'd
work
argue
10 times harder. Yep.
Going into year 2, probably a little less than that. Maybe not a lot less, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
By year 3 or 4, if you're still doing that, what are you actually doing? Right. At that point, at some point, you have to start to replace work hard with work a little smarter, work a little less, work a little something, so that it's sustainable. Otherwise, you do just end up burning out and breaking down. But again, it's such a hard thing to see. That's the thing. And it's such an easy answer. It never fails until the founder fails. Until the founder breaks, that will always be the right answer. So what do I do? How do I make this work faster? You work more. How do I make this work harder? You work more. How do I grow this bigger? You work more. You do more. There comes a point at which a founder can't, right? And you end up in sickbed or something worse, right? And we've seen it happen time and time again. And that can have major, major impacts. And how long is your roster of founder friends at this point where they're now very focused on their health because they've been forced to?
Yeah, exactly.
Because of bad things that have happened to them. How many of them were just like, I really had this awakening in my early 20s where I wanted to take care of myself, and I've done it ever since. I know no one like that, by the way.
The problem with being young is your health isn't a cost yet, right? And frankly, you can abuse the hell out of your body and mind at such an epic level that you'll never get to do again. And by way of that, build a habit that is so bad. I'll give you an example. Until I was 30 years old, I actually didn't know what a calorie was. It didn't occur to me that you could eat too much food and still not have
30
like a
teaches
beach
you
body,
that really quick, man. 30 teaches that real quick.
And I remember like the day I hit 30, I like pinched my side. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Right?
What is this?
For 30 years, I could go and just abuse myself. Like I would eat entire packages of EL fudges, which are so delicious, right? Like at a Sunday evening while I watched a movie. That had to be like 10,000 calories. Like
yeah, exactly.
I don't know
not
how that even worked. Right?
Same belt size. Yep. Doesn't matter.
I didn't even get it. But because my health was kind of taking care of itself, right? It was making up for my horrible decisions. I built a habit, a benchmark, and a muscle that basically said, you can do that stuff and not worry about it. Now, take that a step further, right? Like everyone kind of understands while EL fudges are wildly delicious that they're not good for you, okay? Now let's take it a different direction. And let's say in that same time period, right? I'm also working insane hours at a level of intensity and stress that there's no version that can be healthy. But I'm being rewarded for it. This is the dangerous part.
Yep, that's the thing. It's all reward with no cost at that point. Unfortunately.
Exactly.
Youth is a disease we only suffer in old age, right? Like, it is absolutely true. It's so hard, right? Like, again, you're just constantly rewarded for overdoing and overdoing and overdoing. And until that bill becomes due, and it doesn't until much later, we just enjoy nothing but the rewards. And then all of a sudden the bill comes due and it's a lot less fun.
And look, we have a culture that is all about rewarding sacrifice. I mean, it's kind of the nature of what we do. And I don't want to discount that, right? I mean, that is a necessary evil. The hard work is necessary. The risk is necessary.
Sure.
All those things are necessary. Never once on this show have we ever said you cannot do all of those things, right? Or have no risk, have no hard work, whatever, and money will magically fall out of the ceiling. Ain't gonna happen. What we're saying is there is a part on the other side of this where you do those things, you put in the work, you put in the ambition, you hit those milestones where all of a sudden a cancer starts to form, either figuratively or literally. And it's something that's so easy to ignore, but it will catch up with you. It always catches up with you. I built a habit in my 20s that you work as hard as you can for as long as you can until your body fails, dude.
We carried that shit into our 30s, man. I remember there was like every year it would happen, like typically twice a year for each of us, where it just like all of a sudden it would just disappear. We're like, I'm dead this week, right? And it just, you just literally couldn't go on any further. I remember one of them was the most marked for me, and this one we earned, like we really earned it, was the Zirtual acquisition. I still remember after like 3-4 days of like not quite no sleep, but pretty close to no sleep. I remember coming home, taking a shower, eating something. I lived a mile from the office at that point, got dressed, had my over-the-shoulder bag over my shoulder, shoes on, sat down on the bed for something. I woke up there 5.5 hours later, still basically sitting, leaned back against the bed with my bag on, my shoes on, and my wife looking at me going, I should have moved you, but I didn't want to wake you. I'm like, I don't think you could have, right?
That's
At some point, the bill becomes due.
The bill becomes due. And so what ends up happening, though, is we start hard coding these behaviors at an early age.
that was the thing, dude. It didn't feel like there was anything wrong.
Yeah,
It was
right.
this is
Yep.
the program, right?
Yep.
This is what I do. What do you mean? What do you mean this is
Yep.
weird? No, it's not.
My problem is my ambition didn't come with a shutoff valve. My ambition didn't come with a shutoff valve, right? So at no point did it say, hey, you're good here, as we're recording today. No matter what I do at work today, it won't be enough. And here's the irony. I'm about to go on vacation, like 8 hours, right? I still feel that way. I don't have this ability. I never built this muscle where I can say you're good, right? So when we talk about this, this isn't me saying, hey, I can't believe everybody else can't figure this out. Dude, I can't figure this out. I'm just saying, I'm just identifying the problem. I'm by no means saying I have the answer.
Something that's really funny about everything we talk about here is that none of it is new. Everything you're dealing with right now has been done 1,000 times before you, which means the answer already exists. You may just not know it, but that's okay. That's kind of what we're here to do. We talk about this stuff on the show, but we actually solve these problems all day long at groups.startups.com. So if any of this sounds familiar, stop guessing about what to do. Let us just give you the answers to the test and be done with it.
We've built up this horrible habit, right? We've flexed this muscle. It is now the strongest muscle we have. Let's talk about the actual cost, right? Because we've talked about health a little bit. That's a fairly obvious one. Burnout's there. We talk about technical debt when we're building products. But what is the debt that we're accumulating? What are the costs that add up as we are just burning it at both ends? And ambition is the North Star and the fuel, and it's just all consuming. Or it's relationships, it's our physical health, it's our mental health, our emotional health. Biggest danger, I think, in all this is most of us don't see it until it's too late. When I was talking the story before about falling asleep, sitting up on a bed, I didn't feel tired, right? I didn't notice I was tired. I wasn't like, I should probably take a nap. I was like, I got to tie my shoes and get back in the game. And then I was asleep, right? So you don't see it coming until it literally hits you over the head.
Let's talk about the things that you see right away and the things that are happening just as quickly, but you don't see. The first thing you see right away, this is always kind of funny, is you're going broke.
Well, there's that.
It's numeric, right? You check your bank balance.
Yeah, that one's easy. Oh my God. Sorry. I just had a memory of walking in with the worst piece of facetious good news I had ever delivered. I was like, good news, guys. We've got 3 zeros back in the bank balance. Bad news. There's a negative sign in front of it this time. Oh my God. The team laughed. It was funny, I guess, at the time. We were all really young. And again, it didn't matter. We were okay, it doesn't matter. We're young. We'll figure it out. We'll eat less EL fudge tonight. But yes, that is definitely one of them.
Around that time, I distinctly remember going to the ATM and I needed to get money to buy food. And I couldn't get any money out because the ATM only dispensed $20, and I didn't have $20. I had $16, and I couldn't get my money.
$10 ATM somewhere around. Oh, that's hysterical.
Yeah. Is there an ATM that just has dollar bills, maybe like a strip club or something? I don't even know, right? Definitely a sad low point. But you tend to notice, right, that because it's numeric, okay? Now, there's a spectrum of things that happen from there to the end point on the other end of the scale, which I'm going to say is your health. Your health becomes the one thing you can't ignore, right? Especially when it goes exponentially bad. So along the way, kind of like chapters along the way, the first thing you don't notice, but it happens almost immediately, are your relationships. You're just not hanging out with your friends as much. They called and said, hey, are you getting together? I can't. I got to do X, Y, Z, right?
That's one I definitely noticed. Right? Because you do start saying no all the time. And I think you realize, I did at least, I realized I'm starting to say no all the time. Like the other muscle, I just got really good at flexing it. I got really good at saying no. I got really good at not going. The thing I totally didn't recognize is what the cost of that was going to be at the time.
Yep. And that's the thing. And I've talked about this before. Our kids come in to say hi to us, right?
Yep.
And we run a little bit of math that says the task I have to get done right now versus a son wants hug. How fucked up is it that we even run that math? Right? I hate the fact that even enters my mind.
Yeah, exactly. That should not involve calculus.
That's what I'm saying. But it's this hard-coded behavior that I've developed over a long period of time as a consequence to my ambition, right? Yep. And again, everyone talks about how ambition has all these positive things. And I'm like, it does. Look, I owe everything I've ever achieved to ambition. So again, I'll call it what it is, right? As I watched it develop, and I'm a pretty introspective guy, I start to look at things like, that probably isn't right, okay? So the relationships is one. Now, relationships are a lot of different things. I mentioned friends, but it's your spouse. where like, when's the last time when's the last time you went on a date, or when's the last time you just spent time together without work being a factor? For most founders, like almost never. When is the last time you got together with a friend, not because you had a purpose, but because you had time to get together with a friend? Like, unheard of.
I just had this before we got on the podcast, was talking to a new founder friend, was asking me for some advice on things like networking. And I just sort of asked, like, what's your plan? How are you doing it right now? And it was so transactional, and it was so like tit for tat. Like, what do I get from each one of these people I want to talk to? And I thought, like, I really want to see you warm this process up a little bit. I really want to see you not make this just about, like, they're so purposeful. It has to have a point. Like, each and every conversation has to have a predefined outcome so that I know whether I won or lost. And like, ooh, yeah, that's gonna leave you. Maybe you'll get some outcomes, but boy, you're gonna be fried. You're gonna have no friends. So we talked about it slightly more gently.
To me, that tends to dovetail into the next chapter, which is the cost of your mental well-being. Right? Just as you start to disconnect from people, even the biggest introvert at some level needs some level of, connectivity or discussion. It generally doesn't make you feel better, right? Even if you can go hardcore and say, yeah, I don't need anybody else, I'm good by myself, whatever. At some point, regardless of whether your friends are driving it or not, this level of ambition and intensity has a massive cost to your mental well-being. Another way that drags it down is, again, like every day for me, I wrestle with the fact that no matter what I get done, I could have done more.
It's a good point. And I think it's one of those things, again, where like, I feel like that gets rewarded in founder land so often. This thing of like, I'm a lone soldier. I'm the lone wolf. I ask this question. So when we run our workshops that we do, Will, our Funding 101 or Pitch Deck Perfection, I run some polls during those and I ask people some questions. One of the questions that I ask is about like how they're approaching this thing. Are you working with a team? Are you seeking external help? Or no, I'm a wolf pack of one is one of the responses. And the no, I'm wolf pack of one tends to be in the minority of the responses, which I'm always happy to see. But now I'm giving away a secret here for anybody that's listening, so that they may not answer this in the future. Anybody who answers that I'm a wolf pack of one, I send a personal email to afterwards saying, that's hey, cool. I saw you said you're a wolf pack of one. I want you to know you don't need to be. If you need an ear, I'm here. Sometimes we're wolf pack of one by choice. Sometimes we're not. And it's amazing the responses I get from those, because I think that, again, people are so conditioned to like, this is what I have to do. I'm the ambitious one. I'm on my own. I'm the one that's going to hunt and kill everything that we're going to eat. Okay, cool. Until it's not.
I think the other side of it too, especially this is by definition a very lonely journey, even if you have hundreds of people working at your company. I think part of
sometimes even more so when there's hundreds of people.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be just as isolating.
Yep, agreed. I think what happens too is we look at our accomplishments, our ambition as a source of validation, and all of a sudden, 100%. Over enough period of time, that validation turns into insecurity. It wasn't enough. And it was what I said earlier in the show. I said, hey, at the beginning, if I ever made $100,000, I'd be happier than hell. And then you make it, and you're like, well, now I'm not making 200. And all of a sudden, what you have isn't enough. And that is the definition of being an ambitious founder, is that what you have isn't enough, and you have to have more. How often do you hear...
We're jumping the high jump, and we hold the bar in our hands while we do it, right? No matter how high we jump, the bar just keeps going up. Yep.
It's like, how often do you hear founders say, one day we wanted to get to $1 million. Companies at $1 million, everybody, we're good here, right? Stop selling more. We're at $1 million. You'd be out of your mind if you said that, right?
One of the ones that kills me is when people just talk about like compounded growth rates, and they're just like, we want to achieve this growth rate or that. I was like, okay, so where will that put you in 18 months? And they're like, they have no idea. It was just like, they just wanted to grow. Like, it was an arbitrary growth number. And I'm like, well, but like that there should be like some benchmark you're trying to hit there, right? Like, what's top line revenue? What's EBITDA? What is it you're trying to achieve with that 10% month over month growth or whatever it is? They're like, we just felt like that was a strong growth number.
Yeah, no, I get it. And so as you move down that spectrum, I think about it. Now we're broke. Now our relationships are suffering. Now, of course, with that, our mental well-being is suffering. And then that finishes, the last step of that train is your health. The last step is where your health just gives up. Now, for me, often, like, I would be sick every 6 weeks for like 20 years. I was constantly sick, because what I did is I just worked every possible hour as hard as I possibly could. And eventually my body just gave up.
Just quit. Yeah.
Like,
that's what I was talking about earlier. It's like I remember this happening twice a year, right? Every year for like 10 years.
And it's just like, it's crawled to the finish line over and over. And it was one of these things where I built this habit that I don't have to stop or pace myself, because my body will tell me when we're done. right? How messed
you
up
start
is
taking
that?
that as a positive signal.
Oh my God,
body's
right?
so smart. It knows when and how to totally shut me down. This is awesome.
I mean, come on, man, right? Like, and I got to say, even though, we've talked about this before, like my heart stopping, also, you didn't, it kind of said, hey, maybe we should stop this a bit. But beyond that, I'm starting to realize, and again, as I get not young, I'm starting to realize that I can't even gamble anymore. It's not even like, hey, let me see how it goes. Now I've got to be like, I have friends that are in my age group now, right? Late 40s and now into their 50s who have like significant heart problems, who have significant health problems, right?
Bypass surgeries.
Oh my God, right? And it's like,
pacemakers,
oh, damn,
valves.
we're not playing with house money anymore. Like,
right.
This is dangerous. And I think here's what happens. We get to the end of that journey, if you will, and our health gives out. And for every founder I've ever talked to, that is like, even the most hard-headed founders are like, hey, maybe we got a problem here. It reminds me of, with Steve Jobs, like in his battle with cancer, at the end of his career, he died young in his 50s. And like, he's like, no, I can just like outwork it, basically. And I was like, damn, dude. Talk about your ambition, the thing that's supposed to make you so clear, clouding your judgment at the most epic level. I mean, we're watching it in real time with Elon Musk now as he's becoming batshit crazy. Easily the most ambitious person alive, right? But his judgment and his just
he's
processing
about to
right
face
now
the other side of that sword, it feels like, man, unfortunately.
Well, right,
right.
And he's actually been fairly public about his battles with depression and anxiety and everything else like that. And again, dude, that's Elon Musk, right? I mean, again, you can't get more ambitious, right?
Right.
He is the benchmark for ambition, but also everything that comes with it.
Right. That's it. But so use Simone Biles as the contrast there. Tokyo Olympics.
Yeah.
She hit pause. She's like, I'm just not going to do this.
Yep.
I realize that my ambition has gotten the better of me.
Yep.
I'm hurting myself.
Strong statement.
I'm just not going to do this. And it's going to be really unpopular.
Yep.
And I'm going to eat a torrent of shit from the internet for doing this. And she did.
Yep.
And she came back and she did the right thing then, and she did the right thing now. She came back and proved that you can come back and do what you need to do if you take care of yourself. If she had pushed through then, who knows? Maybe she would have won the medals then. Maybe she wouldn't have. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. She proved that you can pause your ambition. There is a safety valve there that can be exercised if you're, kind of aware enough and know how to do it. Kudos to her, because she's definitely got a better handle on it than I do. And more gold medals. Maybe there's something to that.
I always think about that clouding of judgment in contrast to what I consider a rational person would look at our lives or our decisions and make a call. A couple weeks ago, I'm driving home from a founder lunch, and I call one of my buddies. He's a friend of mine that We're sitting there. It's like 2 o'clock, let's say on a Tuesday, and I'm driving home, and I'm like, hey, I've got to do this and this and this, whatever. And he's like, oh, that's cool. He's like, I'm actually just sitting in my pool right now, just floating around. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? He's like, yeah, my meetings are done for the day.
Do you need help?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, wait.
I'll be there with a life preserver and a waterproof phone so you can get back to work.
Dude, it didn't even occur to me that anyone could ever do that at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, right? Like, and he was so cavalier about it, right? I said to him on the phone, I was like, only one of us is spending our day properly today. And like, look, I'll be honest. I don't want to sit at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday in a pool, right? Like, I would rather be getting something done. That's kind of just how I'm built. But I use that example, though, to point out how a rational person looks at the world. A rational person looks at the world like, I got my work done. I'm ahead of plan. I want to be in a pool. Right. That is a very rational thing to do. And he's done very well in his career. So he's not lazy. I'm like, it would never occur to me that you could do that. So,
on a Tuesday of all days.
Yeah.
My God.
I even said to him, I was like, I said, you are the nightmare that comes to life for me when I think about my staff not working.
You are what my worst fears about work from home look like. Yeah,
exactly.
I want to circle back on something, because you talked about this in the context of like our health being the last thing to fall. And often it is, sometimes it's not, but let's stick with that for a second. And then the clouding of the judgment. So imagine we now get to this point where we've sort of spent all the capital we have, right? Maybe the money's even there. It kind of doesn't matter at that point, because you can't buy some of these things back. The relationships aren't there. Your mental and emotional health aren't there. And now your physical health starts to fall. And we wonder why we make bad decisions around this. Well, you have now isolated yourself. So you don't have people around you because you've burnt the relationships. You don't have people around you to tell you like, hey, you should probably think about this differently. You should probably do this. You should probably reconsider the way you're behaving right now. Your mental and emotional health are so shot that you have lost the plot completely and can't rationalize these things. And then your physical health is failing and you don't know what to do about it. And it just all starts to compound and pile up on you. So I think, again, it is so important to take stock of these things as early as you can. Try to do something to curb the ambition when you do realize that there are real costs at play here.
I distinctly remember how this was put into perspective for me. Ryan, after that whole episode where my heart stopped and you came and helped rescue me and went to a hospital, I had so many things going on at that time. You know, we were launching startups.com. I still had all those startups that I had started before, unsubscribe.com and all that other stuff. And I am clearly a wreck. I mean, at which point I'm 37 years old and my heart's stopping. Like, obviously, I've gone too far. And I'd been at that pace.
Or have you? Or the ambitious person might say, you just hit peak performance. You outworked your own heart. Congratulations.
Yeah, right. Don't want to do that again. And so I'm 20 years deep on that treadmill. I'm at a point where you can't, like, I'm staring at the ceiling of a hospital bed, right? You know, like what the hell, man, right? I'm like, and, you know, my daughter had just been born. I'd just gotten married. Like, my life had kind of just started in like, you know, in that next chapter. And I'm like, and what am I doing? I got the best advice I've ever gotten in my life. It was, look, you're doing all of these things because you can, not because you should. And I thought that was, for some reason, Ryan, that just flipped a switch for me. And of course, as you know, the wise Yoda that said that is my wife. And it stuck with me. I was like, wait a minute. It doesn't even occur to me that if I can do something, that I wouldn't just do it, right?
Yeah, I can, therefore I must. Right?
I can, therefore I must, right?
This was our mantra, right?
Yeah. And how dangerous is that, right? So here's what I say for all of us, right? Yes, you can do more. You can work more. You can risk more. You can do everything more. Yes, you can. That doesn't mean you should. Because when you do that calculus, when you run through that gauntlet and you say on the other side of it, what will be the cost to getting there? It's way higher than you think. In almost every case, it's not worth it.
Overthinking your startup because you're going it alone? You don't have to, and honestly, you shouldn't, because instead, you can learn directly from peers who've been in your shoes. Connect with bootstrapped founders and the advisors helping them win in the startups.com community. Check out the startups.com community at www.startups.com to see if it's for you. Could be just the thing you need. I hope to see you inside.